KCM Wealth Management. Vancouver lawyers Dumal and Boscovich. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. David and Mark Goodman. With lemon and hot. Thank you. That's how I start my day. Well, listen to this. Do we have adequate access to justice? Somebody asked a University of Toronto conference recently. It seems to me that the answer is no. We have wonderful justice for corporations and for the wealthy, but the middle class and the poor may not be able to access our justice system. Who do you think said that, boys and girls? Chief Justice Beverly McLaughlin of the Supreme Court of Canada, and she said it just the other day. She says the middle class cannot hope to pay legal fees that average $338 per hour. So here you are trying to sue all these people, which you did for a moment successfully, but it ate up more than half of your award, 3/4 of your award. Yeah.
Yeah, the justice system is definitely in need of reform as far as I can see. Our court fees here, even our court fees here in BC are about 10 times higher than they are in some other provinces. So if you're going to take on a matter of real importance in a democracy, I mean, the idea that they think they can get away with this in a democracy is, it's so mind-boggling to me that the fight has to continue. We have to keep challenging these things. So I'm really hoping that that more people recognize that if it can happen to me and to all of us on Cambie Street, they're trying to legalize this happening to anywhere, at any time, whenever and wherever the government sanctions or funds some huge mega project that, you know, formed by a multi-billion-dollar consortium of businesses.
You spoke of court fees. Prominent BC lawyer Peter Ritchie has spoken out recently about this very issue, and he points out court fees in BC for a particular case or that he was working on, or in general, but he was working on a particular case, court fees are around $40,000. Next door, in the province of Alberta, which as far as we know is in the same dominion, in the same country, that $40,000 fee is $800. In Ontario, it's $645. Saskatchewan, the daily hearing fees cost only $15 an hour, or roughly $3,000, rather than $15,000 like in BC. So Peter Ritchie says, and he's a lawyer, he says there should be a sign in front of the courts that says, ordinary people prohibited. Now you were awarded $600,000. Now that judgment has been reversed, you would like to go to the Supreme Court of Canada, I would think.
Well, I'd like to reverse the judgment, however,
yes,
whatever it takes. By whatever means you need to do it.
But that's the issue, whatever means.
Exactly.
So do you happen to have a loose $500,000?
I bought a lottery ticket, but it hasn't paid off yet.
Yeah.
But no, it's really, all kidding aside, it's no laughing matter. It's I think it really sheds a large spotlight on the other issue of justice delayed is justice denied. They're talking about having to turf out all these cases because the courts are so jammed up. And my experience with the legal system is if one email's good, 10 are way better. You know, if one call's good, 10 are way better.
Yes.
If you can put motion after motion after motion before a judge, your trial takes years to get heard. And I think there's no incentive for the legal community to expedite these matters because the longer things take, the more money they make.
Yeah, and also if you have a judgment in front of a judge, he can only award so much. But if you have it in front of a jury, the sky's the limit. And so in the case that Peter Ritchie was talking about, which is these girls wanting to find out how their parents died in a BC Ferries crash, he says that BC Ferries did everything they could to persuade the courts not to allow a jury trial, because a jury trial could award the plaintiffs a lot of money, whereas a judge could only allow so much. So every trick in the book is employed to keep ordinary citizens from winning.
Yeah, and that's why it's so, I think we had a really fabulous victory for everyone, a victory for Canada and our Charter of Rights and everything else, when Justice Pitfield ruled correctly that this nuisance was unacceptable. It was intolerable. It was also procured by deceit. It was, I'm not using his words, those are mine, that there was the public at large and a lot of the governing bodies weren't given the full story. And how on earth can that be legitimate? And why does a huge consortium of these multi-billion-dollar businesses, why do they get to profit to build a public works project? And why do I run the risk of losing my life's work and all the goodwill built up in my business over 30 years? Think of all the taxes I've paid in 30 years in business,
Yeah,
it's
not to mention as an individual.
Yeah.
In all of Canada, says Peter Ritchie, the lawyer, it's only the government in BC that's passed rules that operate to prevent ordinary people from having access to the courtroom. I repeat, he says, no other province where the government impedes access to such a degree as here. In BC, you would need a pile of money just to rent the room.
Yeah.
Nowhere else in Canada is this true.
That's right. Well, I need help. I need help, for sure.
Do you in fact, have you worked out a ground plan for the moment?
No.
On your case?
I'm getting a lot of very helpful advice at the moment. And this is
I hope it's free advice.
Monumental challenge. Yes, it is.
The problem is that free advice is often worth exactly what
well,
the money that's in it.
I'm having some very interesting conversations and and communication with a lot of people who are very upset at this precedent for North America. It's
now some people take totally different tacks on this, Susan. People with whom I don't sympathize, but I know I put up something about your story on my blog recently, and immediately I got one of these armchair critics saying, "Well, of course she's happy when she wins the money. Of course she's miserable when it's reversed. But what's that got to do with justice? It's just her problem."
Well, that's a ridiculous comment. It's a ridiculous
What do you
comment.
say to people who say it's just your problem?
Well, the case itself was what happened on the corner of 16th and Cambie. That was my trial. That was the subject of my trial. And Justice Pitfield confined his decision to what happened to my specific business on my corner. And our opponents continually tried to shed a large spotlight on the precedential nature of the decision and drew a lot of other things in, which I think was inappropriate. And
the precedential nature, meaning if they awarded you something, if they gave compensation to people on Cambie, they'd have to do this forever and ever.
Yeah, that's true. And but they should. So they should. When they build projects like this, they have to factor compensation in from the very, very beginning, and they have to tell the truth, and they have to consult with the public in a meaningful way at a point in the project where you can actually make changes to it. That won't be quite so devastating. I mean, we're not talking, again, it's not a pothole, it's not a curb repair, it was catastrophic,
at any point,
lasting years.
At any point in this entire experience, did Canada Line, TransLink, Bombardier, Lanolin or Lavalin or whoever, did any of these people ever bring together a community meeting and sit down and say, folks, we think we're going to have to do cut and cover because it'll work better and it may cause you some disruption? Did that meeting ever happen?
That's fairy tale. Yeah, no, we just, we were completely blindsided,
No, nobody could have expected that.
No. And as a matter of fact, the opposite was true, because those documents, again, that were presented to the city, it said that the cut and cover construction was going to be limited to a certain section of Cambie Street. Not might be, but was. So everybody was resting assured that, that the section from 2nd to 37th would be nothing other than a bored tunnel, even though other alignments were being considered. So it was all deception. It was covert and it was overt. You know, it was all done with confidentiality agreements, and they moved forward, and a handful of people knew what was going on, and then at every level.
Just to illustrate that your situation is far from unique, Kettle of Fish was at the corner of Hornby and Pacific for many, many years, very popular seafood restaurant. I remember shooting a movie in that site years ago. It's gone. Right next door to Kettle of Fish, Wim van der Zam has been operating an urban sort of gardening shop, a lovely little, not little, it's actually quite a big shop, and he has suffered immensely while we built the $6 million bicycle lanes that have 2 people a day riding their bikes. Did anybody ask them? Did anybody compensate them? Kettle of Fish is gone.
Well, I think that small businesses really deserve to be consulted with when these kind of projects go forward. But again, there's nothing that you can suggest that compares to what happened on Cambie Street. It's the largest infrastructure project probably in BC, and one of the largest in Canada. And again, compensation is routinely factored into these projects from the beginning. If they were using the Olympic timeline as their deadline, that's an artificially created timeline.
Susan, we're going to watch very closely to see what happens in the coming weeks and months, and we wish you the best as always. Thanks for doing.
so much, David.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Folks, next week, another bit of a barn burner. Recently, a major Native chief said that the BC government has got to do something about children and poverty. And he's right, but that's not the entire story. Our guest next week, Aboriginal author and lawyer, and a man who is now known internationally, speaks all the time, Calvin Heelan, will be here. And he will ask and answer the question, what should First Nations people do about child poverty? Hope you'll be with us. Thanks for being with us today.